Hello and welcome to Module 4 of the SPH Teaching Kitchen's online cooking series. My name is Emily and Module 4 is all about dinner. So in this lesson I'm going to be showing you how to make our roasted chicken legs with potatoes, cauliflower, and olives. This recipe is known as a sheet pan dinner, so you may have heard of a one-pot or a one-pan meal in the past. This is a take on that where we are putting everything all on one sheet pan or baking sheet, throwing that in the oven, so in a short period of time we will have dinner ready to go on the table without creating a lot of dishes. I love meals like this because they're so easy to throw together. You can make a lot of food at one time to either feed a lot of people all at once or make sure that you have leftovers so you don't have to cook every night of the week. Now this recipe calls for 3 pounds of chicken legs. We like chicken legs because they tend to be a lot cheaper than some of the other cuts of chicken. Now for me, this came out to about 6 legs total. So for our serving size, we'll have 1 chicken leg per serving. I am leaving the skin on here. If you want to take it off, you can. The skin does have some extra fat in it, so taking that away can take away some of that fat. But I find that when we're cooking it in the oven in such a high temperature that we are, a lot of that fat is going to cook off of the chicken and just end up in our pan that we cook it in. I also went ahead and actually trimmed away any visible excess fat from those chicken legs. It's really easy to just lift up the skin a little bit and actually pull away that fat with your hands. So you can take a few minutes, pull away some of that extra fat, and then you're going to have a lot less saturated fat in the end in your dish. In addition to our chicken, we are going to use 1 whole head of cauliflower. I've already gone ahead and cut this up. We want pieces that are about 1 inch in size. We're also going to use some potatoes. So I'm using Yukon Gold potatoes here. I'm going to keep the skin on. You could also use Red Bliss potatoes or really any kind of potato that you like. But the Yukon Golds and the Red Bliss tend to roast a little bit better. For some additional flavor, we're going to add 1/2 cup of olives. These are manzanilla olives, and I've just cut them in half. These are going to add a nice brightness to our dish. They're briny, they're salty, they're going to flavor our food as well. And we do want to keep in mind that these do have a fair bit of salt in them, so we want to be careful that we're not adding too much extra salt to our food as we're seasoning everything. For our seasonings, we are going to use a homemade salt-free adobo seasoning. So we do have a recipe on our salt-free adobo seasoning if you want to try making it yourself. It's very easy to make. There's only 4 ingredients plus a couple extra that you can add that are optional. But if you're used to using something like a store-bought adobo seasoning, if you actually turn it over and read the ingredients on the back, our only ingredients are going to be salt, garlic powder, black pepper, oregano, and turmeric. So 5 ingredients. They're very simple ingredients, which means that it's really easy to make this for ourselves. And by making a salt-free seasoning, that puts you in control of how much salt you're adding to your food. So in our dish, we are going to be adding 2 tablespoons of our salt-free seasoning and a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. That's going to add only about 1,000 milligrams of salt to our entire dish. And we're making 6 servings here, so we're not adding a ton of salt to our dish this way. If I wanted to add 2 tablespoons of the store-bought seasoning that has salt in it already, that's going to add 12,000 milligrams of salt. So this has 12 times as much salt as what we're going to be adding to our dish. So if you have this and you want to use the pre-made mix, you can. Just be careful. I would add a lot less of the store-bought adobo seasoning, and be aware that it does have extra salt in it. Make sure you're not adding any extra salt to your food. So we're going to start by cutting up our potatoes. This is the only thing I haven't cut yet, and we want these to be about the same size as that cauliflower. So I'm going to cut my potatoes first in half. I am leaving the skin on, so I made sure to wash them first. And then I'm just going to cut these into some wedges that are about 1 inch long They're about the same size as my cauliflower. This is very important because this means that everything's going to cook in the same amount of time. Alright, so my vegetables are all cut up and ready to go. I can go ahead and add my seasonings. So I have my 2 tablespoons of my salt-free adobo seasoning here. And to that, I'm going to add a ½ teaspoon of salt. And then I'm actually going to add 2 tablespoons of oil to my seasoning. So we're going to make like a seasoning paste here. And the reason for this is we're going to use some of this seasoning on our vegetables and some of it on our chicken. So this just makes it a little bit easier to divide everything up. Alright, now I'm going to put half of this onto my vegetable mixture. And I'm going to save the rest of this for my chicken. And I'm just going to go ahead and mix this all up. So don't be afraid to use your hands, really get in there, make sure everything's evenly coated in that spice blend. And you can even, if you want to, actually just do this straight on your sheet pan. It might make things a little bit easier. Once your veggies are evenly coated, what you're going to do is make either a space in the middle or put everything off to 1/2 of your sheet pan. You just want to make some room for the chicken. I like making a space in the middle. I think it's easier to fit the chicken that way without having too much overcrowding, but it's really up to you. So my hands are already kind of messy. I'm going to go ahead and actually add my chicken to the same bowl that my veggies were in. That way if you have any extra spices in that bowl, it's just going to end up on the chicken anyways. And we're going to pour the rest of our spice and oil mixture on top of the chicken. Again, my hands are already dirty. I'm just going to use that to make sure that I evenly rub all of that mixture onto my chicken. I want to make sure we're getting all of the good flavors in there. Alright, so my chicken legs, I'm just going to put in an even layer across the middle of my pan. It's going to be a tight fit, but that's okay. You want to try to avoid overlapping too much. You want the top of the chicken to be exposed because that's going to allow the top to get crispy and brown. So if everything's just piled on top of each other, you're not going to get that drying out of the skin. It's not going to be crispy. It's not the worst thing in the world, but this just allows everything to cook a little bit more evenly. Now finally we have our olives. So I'm just going to mix these in with my vegetables. So those olives are going to roast along with the vegetables. Alright, so my pan is ready to go. I have my veggies and chicken all on the same pan. I'm going to put this in the oven at 450 degrees. You do want your oven to be that hot or else it's not going to get crispy, for anywhere between 30 and 45 minutes. We want our chicken to be 165 degrees inside. And we are going to stir the vegetables halfway through. So I'm going to throw this in the oven, and in about 20 minutes we'll stir the vegetables and check back in. Alright, so this has been roasting for 20 minutes at 450 degrees. We can see that the cauliflower and the potatoes, they're already starting to get brown. And we can see that the skin on the chicken is starting to crisp up as well. So I'm just going to give the vegetables a quick stir. And this just helps to make sure that they are cooking evenly. I also know that my oven isn't heated evenly. Most people's aren't. And so I find that the things around the corners tend to cook a little bit faster than the stuff in the middle. So I just want to make sure that I'm stirring that enough to make sure that everything is roasting evenly and nothing's going to burn while other things stay raw. Once you are finished stirring your vegetables, you can leave the chicken as is. We don't need to flip it over, again, because we want that top part, that skin, to get brown and crispy. If we flip it, we're going to lose all of that hard work. Alright, so our chicken roasted for an additional 15 minutes. We can see that the vegetables are nice and soft and brown. that the skin of the chicken started to get brown and crispy, that fat melted away from the chicken. We always want to make sure that we're taking the temperature of meat when we're cooking it so we can be sure that it's safe. So I'm going to take the temperature, and you always want to go in from the side to the thickest piece of the meat. We are at 170 degrees. We want the chicken to be at 165, so we are perfect. And this is done. Now I highly recommend, in order to serve this dish, to actually put a squeeze of lemon juice on top. This is going to replace something like a finishing salt. It's just going to add a nice, bright freshness to our dish, just with that simple squeeze of lemon juice. And I'm just using about a quarter of a lemon here. And then we can also add a sprinkle of chopped parsley or cilantro to this. Again, this is going to add some bright, fresh flavor and also some color to our dish as well. Make it nice and green on top. And there we have our roast chicken legs with cauliflower, potato, and olives. To serve, we're going to have about 1.5 cups of vegetables, and we can top that with 1 leg. And there we have our delicious weeknight dinner. It didn't take a lot of time to prep. It came together really quickly, and in the end, we have barely any dishes. Thank you for joining us for Module 4 of the SPH Teaching Kitchen's online cooking series. This has been our roast chicken legs with cauliflower, potato, and olives, and we'll see you again for the next one.